Mr. Rooster and Mrs. Hen lived on a farm. Mrs. Hen wanted to hatch her chicks in a better place. She asked Mr. Rooster, "How about moving to a nicer place?" Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He said, "Anything you want, honey." Then they packed their eggs in a basket and got ready to move. Mr. Rooster and Mrs. Hen said goodbye to their good neighbors on the farm. "Goodbye, brown kitty. Goodbye, old goat. Goodbye, mother goose," Mrs. Hen said in tears. All their neighbors were sad to see them leave. "Goodbye, Mr. Rooster. Goodbye, Mrs. Hen. We'll miss you both," they said. Mrs. Hen picked her eggs off the basket and left with Mr. Rooster. They set out to find a new home. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached a forest. Mrs. Hen never saw so many trees before. "This place is so wonderful," she said. "Our trees can play under the beautiful trees. Wouldn't you like to live here?" Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He said, "Anything you want, honey." All of a sudden, an elephant appeared. The ground began to shake. Mrs. Hen said with terror, "That elephant must step on us." "You're right, would better go," Mr. Rooster said. So they set out to find a new home. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached a beach. Mrs. Hen never saw such a blue sea before. "This place is so wonderful," she said. "Our trees can play at the beautiful beach. Wouldn't you like to live here?" Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He said, "Anything you want, honey." All of a sudden, a big wave came upon the shore. They ran quickly, but still got wet. Mrs. Hen said with terror, "The waves must take us away." "You're right, would better go," Mr. Rooster said. So they set out to find a new home. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached a pond. Mrs. Hen never saw such a big pond before. "This place isn't perfect. Our trees can swim with the frogs in the water. Wouldn't you like to find a better place?" Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He said, "Anything you want, honey." So they set out to find a new home. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached the foot of the mountain. Mrs. Hen never saw such a high mountain before. "This place is so wonderful," she said. "Our trees can play with the rabbits at the foot of the mountain. Wouldn't you like to live here?" Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He said, "Anything you want, honey." All of a sudden, rocks rolled down from the mountain top. They almost got it. Mrs. Hen said with terror, The rocks must crush us." "You're right, we'd better go," Mr. Rooster said. So they set out to find a new home. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached a desert. Mrs. Hen never saw such a golden desert before. She put her eggs on the hot ground and said, "This place is so beautiful, but our trees cannot stand the heat of a desert. We'd better leave," she said. Mrs. Hen was so tired that she began to cry. Mr. Rooster wanted to make Mrs. Hen happy. He knew his crying always made her happy. He jumped on top of the golden hill and began to crow. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" Mr. Rooster's beautiful crowing reminded Mrs. Hen of their wonderful days on the farm. "I know where the best place in the world is," said Mrs. Hen. "The best place in the world is our old farm." Mr. Rooster and Mrs. Hen happily returned to their farm. They finally found their perfect home. This story is so interesting, right? Thanks for listening. Bye bye.